Hello, welcome back to my tech farm. I have another 3D printer review. I think this is the biggest box I got so far. This is Sovol SV04, their IDEX 3D printer. IDEX means independent dual extruders. It is able to print in two colors. And this box is sent to me by the Sovol company in exchange for a review. This is not new model. I mean, it's on the market several months, maybe even a year now. So in this case, I'm always more concentrating on the print quality instead of the structure or the assembling of the printer. The print volume is 300 by 300 in XY direction millimeters and 400 millimeters in Z direction. And it includes a lot of upgrades which I usually upgrade on those budget printers, for example on Industry. So for example, it has the flexible plate. Both extruders are direct drive extruders, and it has auto leveling sensor, which I'm not sure at this moment how it works, because those two extruders are on the same as Gentry. And it is silent. It has a dual Z-axis, which I think it is mandatory for this size of the printer. And I have to mention it has the large SD card, which is very big plus for me. It can print in different modes, single, dual or mirror, creating two mirror objects, or duplicate. Of course, the print volume significantly reduced when we are using the mirror or duplicate modes, but I think it's time to see what's in the box and do some test prints. This is a time lapse of approximately 2 minutes, and they didn't save the black foam, so everything is nicely protected during the shipping and it will not be damaged. And this was content of this huge box. So we have the XZ Gentry and the base, which is basically pre-installed with some cables, and then we have sample spools, two of them, 200 grams, and they are on the spool, big plus for the Sovol. These are blocks for collecting the waste material from the oozing of the nozzle, and also silicone pads. Probably here they clean the nozzle when it's not printing. User manual screen. These are tools, so a lot of tools we have here. Maybe metallic tweezers could be included too. And then we have some spare nozzles, boards for assembling, cable, big SD card. These are spool holders with the filament runout sensors, spatula, power cable, and these are distancers, probably for the leveling of the X Gentry. And first step of assembling is installation of the Gentry, and for this we have to use two bolts from each side, and we have to screw them from the side, not from the bottom, which makes this assembling step much easier, especially with this size of the printer. For the first look, it looks stable if I try to move it here or in this direction, but for this length I think I can see a lot of moving here, so I'm not sure how sensitive it is to vibrations when it's printing on the top of the Z-axis. And probably I would like to add some kind of stiffening triangle here. The next step is mounting the spool holders and the filament sensors, and of course we have two from each. According to instructions, the filament sensor is 160 mm from the edge, and from the filament sensor approximately 80 mm should be the spool holder. And same on the other side, the sensor is not really aligned with this spool holder, but this small curve will be fine. Next is the purge bucket installation. We have two of them, of course, and the bolts are already there, only I have to lose them so I can install the bucket. And I can adjust the height, and this silicone pad should touch the nozzle. And of course same on the other side. And one more time I'm checking both extruder that I will not stuck in this silicone pad. It's okay. And basically after only a few minutes I'm already on the wiring stage. In the meantime I checked the tension on the V-slot wheels and the timing belts. On my printer they are already set correctly, but definitely this is something what should be checked before you turn on the printer. Tension on the timing belts is easy to set because we have this tensioner on Y-axis, and for X-axis we have two from each side. And checking the V-slot wheels, well, you have to use the open-end wrench and adjust the eccentric nut in case that it is not tight already. Most of the wires are labeled, or they can be connected only in that one position, so it is very hard to make some errors here in the wiring stage. Next is connecting and installing the screen, and it will be held with these two bolts from the front side. Very important step is to check the voltage if it's set correctly for your country. I'm in Europe, so in my case it is okay, 230. If you are in US, for example, in that case you should set to 115. It's time to turn it on and check the moving of the axis. Settings, move. Okay. So wiring is okay because the axes are moving correctly. And now the first step before the leveling, I have to make sure that this XL extrusion is horizontal. And for this I will use these two spacers. I think it will be easier to explain everything in 2 dimensions. So we have this printer, but I need a little bit simplified drawing. It will be easier to explain. Let's lower the X gentry. And let's zoom in, it will be easier to see any imperfection. So first very important step is to make this XL extrusion horizontal using those spacers on 2 sides. Next step is to lower the X gently until we get the perfect friction between nozzle and the paper. Don't forget, the bed may still be under the angle. So that's why it's very important is the next step, the manual leveling. By rotating these knobs, we can move the bed to be parallel with the moving path of the nozzle. And after this, the bed will be horizontal too, like this alloy extrusion. Don't forget that we have the second extruder, which may be a little bit higher or lower, but we cannot use the leveling knobs anymore. Instead, we have to rotate this screw on the top, and with this we can adjust the position of the second extruder to get the perfect friction between nozzle and the paper. And after this, we will have 2 extruders on the same Z coordinate. After this, we can use even the auto-align Z command if we accidentally moved out of the synchronization any of the lead screws. Because the auto-leveling sensor, we have the reference surface now, which is the bed of the printer. And after this, it will automatically align the Z and make this XL extrusion horizontal again. After this, it is good to check again the Z offset. And now let's talk about auto-leveling. Let's say we have this warped bed. This means in 4 corners we have that perfect friction, but in the center it's a little bit lower or higher. Now that the auto-leveling sensor will touch the surface and create an offset mesh which will store to the EEPROM of the printer, and during the printing it will compensate this in the Z coordinate, and the nozzle will follow the surface of the bed and the object will be printed correctly. And now let's see everything how it looks like in real life. So I'm doing the first homing, and here you can see the auto-leveling sensor in action. Then I am disabling the stepper motors so I can rotate with my hand 2 lead screws so the X gentry is aligned on those supports. I can move the Z coordinate higher and I can remove the supports. And then I'm setting here the Z offset until I get that perfect friction between nozzle and the paper. And then this is the manual leveling in all 4 corners, and then I'm repeating this until I get that great friction everywhere, and last check in the center. And of course I have to check the position of the second extruder, but here I cannot use the knobs but the screw on the top. And also I check how this auto-align Z works, but after this very important is the auto leveling, and here you can see the 4x4 offset mesh recording process. Everything has to be saved and it is ready for the printing or calibrating. Nozzles are heated and I am inserting the filaments. So these are those modes. At first I want to print something in dual mode because I want to calibrate the position of 2 extruders relatively next to each other. And there is a file, so-called calibration. If necessary I can do some adjustment here. Let's say raise the Z offset. Of course I can change the speed, the temperatures, the hotbed temperature and the fans. So the aligning lines are printed with the second extruder, and now it is printing with the first extruder, and I have to check if they are aligned or there is any offset between them. And in 10 minutes it's printed, so this is very fast printing, and this is very smart solution. Those who are using vernier caliper will know how this works. So this is the center. In my case it's perfectly aligned and I don't have to change anything, but as you can see the distance between these lines on white or blue part are not equal. You just have to check which one is aligned and count the number of those lines, and that has to be entered into menu. And after this small correction, this is a center line, and now 2 colors are perfectly aligned with each other, even in the X direction too. These are codes on the SD card, and I can see dual XYZ cube, so I believe this is calibration cube in 2 colors. The start is good, only it's hard to see from this part cooling fan. Usually this calibration cube is printed in approximately half hours, but now after 42 minutes it's on 50%. It's printed in 1 hour and 21 minutes. The object sticks very good to the bed, but it is good that it is flexible. This was the brim. And this cube looks great. And of course that's why it is important to spend a little bit more time with the settings and the calibration, because in that case these two colors will be perfectly aligned. And with my finger I cannot see any steps between these two colors, so the offset is perfectly set. Let's try something in the mirror mode. Mirror XYZ cube, so still with the provided G-code on the SD card. Printed in 39 minutes. They came out okay. I can see some elephant foot here, so definitely I have to play a little bit with the Z offset. And as you can see, this is not the original cube we usually use, because it has the X and I know Y on both sides. Duplicate mode, and I'm curious if we can do the pin support challenge in duplicate mode with 2 extruders. I'm not sure why I like this test print so much. It is not super informative, but definitely it is fun to watch. As you can see, they are printed successfully. I was worried a little bit with the printing on the second extruder, because as you can see it didn't start correctly. I mean, the bed leveling is properly good, but I have to adjust a little bit that Z offset between 2 extruders. If it is not 100% perfect, you can see the result. Well, except this problematic bed adhesion on the second extruder, they are both printed correctly. Very constant diameter of the pin, this means the extrusion is very constant and precise. And look at this sphere, perfect from the bottom until the top. This means the part cooling is very good too, even if it is only from one side. And I want to prepare my own G-code, but I don't want to use the Sovol slicer. Instead I want to add to the Cura slicer. So I have to download this RAR file from the Sovol's website, and then I have to unpack it to my computer. And inside the program files Cura, I have to find these 2 folders, and then I have to copy these files. These are the definitions, and these are the extruders. And then I can start the Ultimaker Cura and add these basically modes one by one. So I have to find the Sovol folder, and here you can see these modes appear like different printers, and we have to add them one by one. And after this they will appear here like a separate printers, because these are separate modes for the printing with the SV04. Let's start with the dual mode. The Benchy has prepared the files in 2 pieces for 2 colors. This will be the left extruder, this the right extruder, and I have to merge these 2 objects. And I can slice it, and G-code is prepared. Printer is in dual mode. Print dual Benchy. This was a little bit strange start, because the purge line is in white color and also the skirt, but then it started to print with the blue color. This means it's immediately started with the object, and it is not so perfect that first layer, because we don't have any purge lines with the second extruder. A nice progress, but only with 1 color, and I'll explain this later. It was almost finished, but I have to stop the printing. And this Benchy, except this failure on top, could look really great. And I know the reason why it failed, because of the weak adhesion to the bed. And the reason for this was that the previous printing it's finished with a 3mm retraction, and when we start with this printing, it did the purge line and the skirt with the other extruder, and then it started with this one printing in the air, and when it starts with really printing, only a few lines was in the bed holding the object. Problem was that here I use the same material. If I want to use the same material, in this case I can go to the manage materials, and I can create a duplicate from an existing one, and then I can rename it and change this color, and then I can select that one, and in this case I can immediately see 2 different colors, and this time everything, even the skirt, will be printed correctly. And this time the start is correct, so it started with the white purge line and starting the first layer. This is just a shorter time lapse, so I can show you how these 2 extruders are printing 2 colors, replacing each other. Looks okay so far. The printing is at 50% and it's almost midnight, so I have to go to sleep, but I hope everything will be finished correctly, and see you in the morning. Printed in 3.5 hours. This Benchy basically looks great. We can see some extra materials here, and that's not typical stringing, but the extra material from the oozing of the nozzle until it's in standby position. Next printing will be the Hilbert cube, which is impossible to print without supports, and it is very hard to remove it, and I will print the supports with this Prima Select PVA filament. The printing is at 20% and it looks like it will be okay now, because this is my second attempt. I had to use some PVA based glue stick because the PVA didn't want to stick to this bed, but now it's okay. And after approximately 6 hours the printing is finished. Imagine this is only 40mm cube, and what would happen if you will print something really big. And this is that oozing material collected by these buckets. This is how it looks like. So on the first look it's not perfect, but it has some extra materials from the oozing. These are not those strings, and it is very easy to clean. But what is impossible to clean are these supports, I mean with regular material. And this material I only have to place in the water, and it will dissolve after a couple of hours. After approximately 2 hours. And after 8 hours I will change the water once, and it's perfectly clean, only I have to remove these strings. And this is the final results. I know another useless product, but a good example where can we use those PVA based supports. Next printing will be in single mode. I will print a Christmas tree in spiral or vase mode, because I want to check if everything is okay here. I noticed that some printers may have a problem with this mode. In the meantime I can see that auto leveling sensor works great, so the bed leveling is okay even if it is so big surface. And after a couple of hours of printing I noticed that SV04 also have this problem with spiral or vase mode printing. I noticed those small breaks at the beginning very rarely, but later when the diameter was smaller they became very often. Printed in 5 hours and 9 minutes. The printing is finished, and actually it looks okay, but of course here I can see those spots and at the top on the smaller diameter they are more common. That's the reason why I didn't stop it at the beginning of the printing. But anyway, with this Christmas tree it's not a big problem, because it looks like it is part of this Christmas tree decoration. But of course I want to be sure that the reason for this is that there is some of power loss function. And I will reprint this Christmas tree, but starting from the smaller diameter where the problem started, and I will add this line into the beginning of the G code. With this I will disable this resume power loss function, and of course at the end I want to enable it back, so I will add this line at the end of the G code. And the second tree will be in the silk gold color from the other film. And this time the printing was very smooth without any breaks from the beginning until the end. This tree has the hole from the bottom, so later I can insert some LED light. And this time it is perfectly smooth, so if you want to print something in a vase mode, definitely don't forget to disable this resume power loss function. Now I already mentioned that I don't like the position of the spool holder compared to the filament sensor, and I want to print the spacers for this, and they will be printed in the PETG. Since I have two of them, this is perfect object for printing at the same time in the copy mode. But unfortunately for this I need two PETG spools, but I don't have them in the same color. My print settings 235 on the nozzle, 80 degrees Celsius on the bed with 50% cooling. These are just spacers for the spool holder, which will be 20mm higher and 25mm to the back, and with this the spool will be approximately in the middle of the filament sensor. On one side I'm using M4 bolts, on the other M5, both 20mm length. M4 because I want to reuse those T-nuts which are in the slot already. And also I'm reusing the washer which was below the M4 bolt. And now final words, first about IDEX printers. It is great to have this kind of printers with 2 extruders, so we can have these completely new possibilities. For me it is not so important to print in 2 colors, but for example printing something which will have those water soluble filaments as a support, that's great, completely new possibilities with this. It's a pity that it doesn't have all metal hot, and so I'm limited to, let's say, 240 degrees Celsius, but even then I can print PLA, PETG, maybe some ABS and something like that. This kind of versions where we have 2 separate extruders and hot ends is better, I think, compared to those where the filaments is mixed in one nozzle, because there definitely we always need some kind of purge tower because it needs some time until it cleans the nozzle from the previous color until it starts with a new one. The leveling is very important with this. So first leveling of the X-jetty, make it horizontal, then leveling of the bed, so make it parallel with this one. But I noticed that I always accidentally move this X-jetty from the horizontal position by time, especially if the separator motors on the Z-axis are not powered and I'm pressing manually the filament. I always do some micro movement of this, and that's why it is good that it have that auto Z align, I think with G34 command. This means this separator motor has the separate drivers and this align can be done automatically. It's good. Now about the bed. I don't suggest you to try to move aggressively the object until it sticks on the bed surface. Always remove this and do the flexing, because if you are too aggressive until it's on this surface, you may easily do some micro movements on those leveling knobs. And if you do this too often, by time you have to do this bed leveling more often, that manual bed leveling, which will make the bed parallel with the moving part of the nozzle. Is it for beginners? Not really for complete beginners, because definitely it needs much more settings. So definitely spend a lot of time with these settings and calibration. And if you do this correctly, after that you will have very nice printings. But definitely don't be sorry for that time, because it will be paid definitely. That's my experience. You know, if we have some additional comments, few lines in the comment section. Thank you Sovol for sending me SV04 for this testing, and to you all, happy printing!